Howdy friends, here at Cascade, finally doing our Speed Twin review. I'm pretty pumped. Let's get to riding. So a good place to start this video is actually off the bike. One of the things about this bike that's interesting is that you know, it's based off of the Thruxton bike, the frame and everything, and the engine. There's some tuning things they've sort of changed on this one, but it sits more like a street twin. So it looks and sits kind of like a street twin, but it's really more closely related to a Thruxton. Believe it or not, guys, it weighs a little bit less than a street twin. So more engine, less weight. That's kind of interesting. And the reason I'm starting off the bike, just as you know, the first thing I notice about this is just how nothing about this bike seems too much. It feels like extremely light. So let's start it up. Turn the key. The new Triumphs, you just push down on the starter there. It's a little different than the older ones with the starter button. It's a universal switch on this one. Okay, we got ride modes. We got, you know, fair amount of good information on the 2 gauges there. Oh yes, it sounds amazing. Let's see what mode we're in. Let's start in road. And so we have rain, road, and sport. We're going to start in road, and believe me, we're going to make our way to sport. Wow, this thing's easy to monkey around. Oh yes, I love the 1200 engine. It's always great. It's not overpowered by any standard. In fact, the numbers are, you know, I think it's like 90 something horsepower, you know, 80 foot-pounds of torque. So you get about equal torque and horsepower. You have full use of the power, and it doesn't feel like it's gonna, you know, result in a loss of control, essentially. Now for the boring part of this review, which is this is traffic, I'm pretty pleased to say that I think this bike would absolutely make a good commuter. If anything, it might result in a few speeding violations. So, you know, as far as a commuter goes, I think this would be a great bike. I mean, you do get some standard safety equipment. I mean, you have ABS, you have traction control. You know, no cruise control and nothing crazy fancy like that. No heated grips, you know, it's not really... now, you could add those things, but it's not really that kind of bike. If you wanted to commute, you might throw the heated grips on, you might get yourself a little screen, get yourself the little, you know, luggage so you can get your groceries or bring your things to work, or just get a backpack, you know. But I think the joy of this bike is really that it's just easy to sit on, you know. The bend in my knees is definitely more severe than on a street twin. So it's not quite as neutral in that regard, but it's a sportier bike. It's, you know, it's based off of a sport bike, and it honestly feels like a sport bike. Now, real quick, but while we're in the quiet area and you can actually hear me well, I'm 6'3", 6'4". I'm a skinny giraffe chicken, as Ricky would say in Trailer Park Boys. It's a little small for me, if I'm being honest. it's not bad by any chance, but I can tell you that my knees would start to hurt after a couple hours, maybe a few hours, and that's where it would get me, is the knees. So if you're a shorter rider, no shade, no shame, this bike would be probably perfect. It is really not menacing in any, you know, I meet so many people that they look at my Tiger 1200 and they go, that's just too much, it's too tall, it's too heavy. And that is the opposite of this bike. In every way, essentially. It's very nimble. We can dodge things. Let's get all the other standard crap out of the way before we get to the fun part, okay? Mirrors. They look good, and they're kind of brought in a little bit, which is nice. Which means you could filter if you wanted to in traffic, and it would be no problem. So kudos there. They're okay. I mean, I'm seeing a lot of elbow in the mirrors, if I'm being honest. But I think they did that as a means to get it in, so that the bike is narrower. As narrow as possible while still being an upright seating bike, that is. Horn sounds, you know, sounds like a Triumph horn. Meep meep. Can we change modes while driving? Yes. That is nice. We're gonna leave it in sport from now on because we are approaching the country. Other stuff, the seat is pretty comfy. It's a little cushy, and that could be a good thing or a bad thing depending. The nice thing about these upright seating bikes also is that you're going to be sitting and looking above the cars, and I always like that better. I like sitting up high. I feel like I'm more visible, and I feel like I can see and read cars ahead of the one in front of me better. And this kind of has that feel to it. It's almost like a scrambler in a way. It's kind of interesting. It's like my knees are bent like a sport bike, but I'm sitting on a scrambler is what it feels like. The engine sound is just awesome as always, you know. I mean, there's so little I have to cover about the engine and the sound with these Triumphs because so many of them share the same platforms, and that's good. I mean, it's they're really they're refining the engine essentially, and it just works so well in everything. I think the Scrambler 1200 was just an awesome vehicle. But this is the first time I've ridden it, and you know, it feels like really intuitive. Everything feels good. It feels much better than a Bonneville to me. I just rode the T120 Bonneville, and I liked it. But the one thing I didn't care so much for was the sort of lazy handling, and this does not feel like that at all. Still has the great engine character, but it has a lot less weight and it handles much better. When we're off. It's just monstrous at the low end, you know. This bike, it's like when you get a fistful of throttle, it almost makes you accelerate harder because it's pulling you off of the bars, and it's, you know, it's accelerating with you. Oh yeah. It really likes about 4,000 RPM or 3,500, just like every other twin Triumph bike. Even the 900s are that way. Because of the way the crank is set up, it makes its power in the middle, which is great for smoothness and control, because if you get your power too early on, that's when the wheel wants to break loose, like on a Harley sometimes. Alright, let's do a little bit of acceleration here. We're going to go into second. Okay. Oh yeah. The handling is really good. It turns almost like a cruise. It feels to me like a bit of a cruiser. I mean, you just kind of lean your hips and look where you want to go, and the bike goes. There's not a whole lot of handwork you have to do. It almost rides itself. We're gonna do a takeoff in road mode. off. It's still a monster. The front wheel really wants to come up, and I'm trying not to because I don't own this bike. In fact, you know, this isn't even a demo bike. Those guys are so awesome at Cascade, and they must really like me. So, okay, it's still a monster in road mode. Let's go over to sport now. Okay, we're gonna do a third gear roll on. Yeah, honestly, they're both monstrous in both modes. The torque is excellent. I think it feels like it revs maybe a little faster initially in sport. It's just a monster in any. I mean, let's try rain mode. Screw it. Let's see. Okay, now we're going into rain mode. I'm gonna slow her down. We're in rain. Okay, hit this turn, pound it. Here it goes. It's still a monster. Okay, the rain mode, you can definitely, it's definitely a little more delay, a little more laggy. Now, one thing that's kind of interesting about this bike is it really, you know, like I said, it has the stature of a commuter, but it's pretty comfortable. I would say, you know, I would feel totally comfortable doing over 100 miles an hour on this bike, but it feels very compact, which is strange because, you know, normally that's not what I think of when I think of like a speed capable machine. So now, is this the kind of bike that I would ride year round? That's a good question, and I actually don't think that I would. I'll take this road. I don't think that I would, and I don't. You could certainly. It's got all the safety features and everything, but it's just a bike where, you know, it sure feels great to be out here on a nice day. But at the same time, you're out here in the elements. It's, you know, it's kind of a styly bike. It doesn't have no fairing, none of that, which is fine. But you definitely prefer the weather to be nice than you know, than not, because it's all hitting you. Now, you could put a screen on it, but I imagine the screens for this are pretty small, and maybe the best you could probably hope to you know, achieve with that would be getting the air around your chest, maybe. This day right here seems just perfect for this bike. So let's go in here and just look at the bike. Let's talk about it a little bit. This is a cool place. I come here a lot. They probably hate me by now. But that's what they get for having such a nice piece of land. I am noticing actually a fair amount of heat on the right side. On the right side of this bike. Let's see here. So, you know, that's something to think about, I guess. It doesn't really, not a big deal, but that's where your leg's going to be, is up against the bike. All right. Let's look at it and talk about it. Okay. Going to neutral. I always have a hard time finding the kickstand on this. Okay. All right. Okay, so far what I think about the bike, it's excellent. I mean, it handles great. It's sporty. It's sort of, you know, towny feeling. It's almost like a dual purpose machine. Just cruising through the countryside is very nice. The seating stance very comfortable. Legs pretty swept back, you know, but that aids it in its nimbleness when you're tucked in. So, you know, you can make it it's sportier than a street twin, but it's very similar to a street twin. It feels actually a lot like a street twin with just a ton of gusto. The suspension, it feels good. You know, it's a KYB suspension. I have really no issues there. You know, I think if you were really going hard through a turn, you know, you may not be able to get it precisely where you'd like it, but it's you know, some of this bike comes in almost at a stock level. Now you can upgrade components on this, you know, especially with the rear shock. The rear shocks always make such a huge difference if you want better handling. So you could go and put a higher performance shock in the rear. It's a little divey in the brakes. Most Triumphs are, but nothing detrimental really as far as that goes. Braking is really sharp, especially the front. Those front brakes feel great. The rear, you know, whatever. It's it's an okay rear brake. Of course, I'm usually not impressed with rear brakes that much, but nothing bad about it, I can say. Now we have the red one here. They have the silver, and they have a jet black model, at least here at Cascade. And in the sun, the red just looks great. I don't know if it shows up on camera that well, but it looks great. And the silver looked really good too. This one stands out a little bit more, if you ask me. I would accessorize this with a little bit more stuff. I want the heated grips. I wish it had cruise control, because, you know, the thing is, this bike is it's highway capable. I mean, it's a big engine. You could cruise all day long if you wanted to. Well, part of cruising all day long, you know, cruise control is pretty nice to have. It takes a fatigue factor out for you. So you could add it on. You could put on a twist lock. I'm not a huge fan of those, but yeah, I'm kind of ready for cruise control to be on every bike. I think if you're a gearhead, you could probably milk out a lot more power out of this bike, you know, with a few upgrades. I think changing the way it breathes and the fuel mapping, and you'll probably have you could probably break 100 horsepower pretty easy on this bike. But it feels pretty good as it is, and I would really see no need to do that, honestly. You know, as far as what I would feel comfortable going top speed, I think I mentioned maybe 120. You know, when you're sitting upright, you're catching a lot of wind, and the handling characteristics, at some point, it's not a super sport, right? You're not in a bubble and tucked into a little clip-on stance. So, you know, that's going to be your limit. The engine will not be the limit on this bike. It'll be other factors. So, but my impression is, my impression is, it's great. It comes out of the box really nice. You know, it's nothing. It's nothing. You don't get anything unnecessary, I guess I'd say. So, if you got a little bit more money for an entry-level machine that you want some performance out of, this is a great option. Well, guys, I got lost as hell. Had to consult the map. But hey, that's not a bad problem to have out here, is it now? It could be me, but this bike seems to rev up a little higher than other 1200s I've been on. So one strange criticism that I have is actually with the gauges. They're really neat, they're nice gauges, but when the sun is at high noon, like it is right now, there's a lot of glare, and it's, I don't know if you can see it. I'll try to, you know, emulate it with my angle here, but there's a lot of glare, and it's a little hard to read like what I'm doing. I guess once you know where the needles are, then you're fine. But you know, small complaint, but has to be said. Well, I'm wrapping up the review ride, and I guess I'd just say there's very little to complain about with this machine. It's compliant in all the right ways, and it's very confidence inspiring. It's simple in its executions. It's got just enough as far as technologically speaking that you don't want really for anything. There's always room to add accessories and whatnot, but you know, it's just really pleasant. But it's also sharp when you want it to be. So it's a neat dichotomy that you get out of this bike. Well guys, I'm gonna cut the chitter chatter here. I want to really again say thank you to Cascade Moto for letting me try the bike out, and come check them out. They're really awesome, good people. I mean, I wouldn't, my channel would not exist without Cascade, and I'm not related to them. They were just nice enough to help me out, and they really like the interactions that we're getting on the channel. Everyone's been mostly really nice and pleasant. So if you have any questions on the bike, let me know. I always try to answer comments. I'm not so big that I can't do that, but if I don't know something, I'll find out. I'll come back to the store and get the answer. And as always, you guys ride safe. Come test one of these for yourself and make your own assessment. No one can really tell you how a bike is going to be for you. So, you know, come do a test ride. Well guys, if you like the content, if you like the content, please like, subscribe, comment. It really helps, and we're very close to 1,000. So thank you very much to everyone who's subscribed to such a nobody as far as YouTube goes. And I will catch you guys next time. Oh, I gotta return this baby. Don't make me give it back. Come on down to Cascade and get yourself back. They got all kinds of Triumphs and gear and helmets too. Hey, that one's on the house, Cascade. That's your theme song. You're welcome. Seriously, come on down here. You'll probably see me. I'm here way too often.